Welcome to the Think Bigger Actors podcast, where I share with you different kinds of talks and coachings and conversations with actors and industry professionals on thinking bigger. I hope these conversations will help you on your path to success, because I believe success is an inside job that starts with your mindset and the thoughts you hold dominant in your mind. Change your thoughts and you change your world. Your path to thinking bigger begins now. Welcome back to the Think Bigger Actors podcast. I'm your host, Dajuan Johnson, and we're back with another banging episode in this strike time. It is so good. Are we still at it? Are we still striking? Yes, we are at the current time. I am taping this podcast, and this episode is banging. Wait, are the kids still saying banging? Can I say that? Well, you know what? Even if they're not saying it, I'm bringing it back. I'm bringing banging back. That totally can mean so many different things. But listen, today on the pod, we have an agent over at DDO artist, Anthony Boyer. And I'm going to share up front, this episode was recorded before the strike. It was recorded before the strike, well before the strike. Remember I said I have a lot of back episodes that I want to get out because I think they're freaking amazing. And honestly, a lot of information is pretty freaking great in this podcast. But I'm going to get back to Anthony in just one second because it is amazing. It's so good. I told you in the last episode that I dropped that I got dropped by my agent. And yikes, this isn't a keep it real moment. This isn't one of those moments because I think when everyone's saying, I got to keep it real. Well, I think that saying is getting way overused. That's what I'm going to say. I think it's getting way overused. And I'm always pretty freaking real and transparent with you, especially on my podcast. So this is a sigh moment that I had. I was on the strip of Las Vegas. I should have told you, this is story time. I was on the strip of Las Vegas with my dad, and it was freaking hot. I want you to imagine it was hot that day. He was walking around and he wanted to go into every freaking hotel on the strip like it was his first time. And we've been there before. My dad go there once a year, yearly trip he comes to LA, and then we spend a few days here, and then we go visit my sister out in Vegas with him. And so we're on the strip. It's a hot freaking day, and I get a call from my manager. Crap. It's the first thing I say to myself. Not because I'm expecting bad news, but because I didn't book out. We're in the middle of a strike, so I figured I didn't have to book out. And, but you should always book out. It was just the writer's strike at this time. And so I picked up, and my manager proceeds to tell me, Dajuan, your agent's contract did not get renewed at the agency. It probably means you will not have an agent because you are in between jobs, but I just wanted to tell you that right now. My first thought, okay, where's he going? Can I go with him? Was what I asked. And she said, I don't know. He's not returning calls right now. Give him some time, but you should reach out when you can. And I said, okay, I will. I hung up. My dad is walking ahead of me at this point because he's not the kind of parent that waits up for you when you lag behind. And my second thought was, damn. But my third thought shocked me. Well, right now you are spending time with your pops, and that is what is most important. All of this can wait until we get back to Los Angeles. Go through all of your feelings then. We're not saying pretend they're not happening. Just go through all that then and spend this time with your dad. And that's what I did. I moved the F on. I've been dropped before a couple of times. If you're in this business a little bit, you've been dropped before. And I also left the team before a couple of times as well. But this time it felt a little bit different. I thought these were the reps that I was going to be with for a while. And 6 weeks prior to this, if you guys remember, I had shot Hawaii, NCIS Hawaii. I was shooting a guest star there. We had already had information that I would be going back, recurring on it, still recurring. And I just finished 7 seasons on a show on Bosch, on a hit streaming services, just doing top of show episodes. And there were talks about spinoffs that were going on. And here I was, again, agentless. Damn. I'm back here again. I know you're out there feeling that because you know how you think you are moving ahead, and then all of a sudden it's like, Well, look, I'm going to finish this up in the D12 shot. But I thought this was such a fitting episode to have the conversation with Anthony on, to start the conversation about being dropped and my thoughts and my feelings about all that, because this is what I am currently going through. And I just want to make sure that we are talking about it in real time, in the middle of a strike, in the middle of, mindset shifts. So stick around for that D12 shot and we'll talk about that in just a little bit. Okay, Anthony Boyer, this was such a magical talk. I reached out to him because he had this thread on Twitter. I think I should call it X now. I don't want to get in trouble. But he had the top 10 tweets for actors. And I thought, I need to get him on the podcast. And, but Anthony said he had a couple requests first, and he wants to see, number one, he wanted to do the podcast in person. So if you have not seen this, or you're listening to this on your jog, on your walk, on your exercise, whatever you're doing, make sure that you pop over to YouTube, because this was done for the video. We did it all in person at the studio. And number two, he said, I can't ask him the same old boring questions that he gets asked all the time. So the pressure was on. I said yes to both. This episode is just freaking amazing. We talked about really great getting attraction in the industry, what a development client actually is. I wanted to really get a definition of that. The real conversations actors should be having with their agents. And seriously, the miscommunication between agents and clients. And this talk, there was so much business talk on this coming from an agent. You see, I get this so much being in the business for so long, really having a business talk with the agent. And we actors, we think about this from an artistic standpoint and not the business standpoint. Listen, here's what I'm going to tell you. I broke this down because it was such good stuff. I went back and listened to this podcast. We covered a couple of these things. Why actors are bad bosses in their acting business, and he broke it down. How not being prepared for your self-tapes can be the kiss of death for you. How actors are asking the wrong questions to their team. There were so many good things. So here's what I did. You're going to see below this podcast a link. There is a link. I did the top 15 questions that I came up with during this podcast that I want to give to you. So go to the link below this podcast. It's going to be there. I just listened to it over and over again. I really, really, really did. So I'm recommending you grab some paper, some pen, and open up the note section of your phone and be prepared to take notes, because this is going to be a good one. Okay. Let me stop talking so we can dive in. Like I said before, stick around for the D12 shot at the end, because that's when I'm going to break it all down and finish my story about my agent and getting dropped. Anthony.
Hello.
I'm so happy that you're here and that you said yes to this, by the way.
Yeah. So I think I came for a free giveaway.
You did. I love it. I am gonna start with something that really, really, really is near and dear to my heart. You have mentioned that you are really good at dad jokes. And so I'm going to need you to, in this space, you're on the spot. I mean, you already say, I can give you to the end of the podcast, but then you're going to be thinking about it the whole entire time.
No, what do you want? My favorite one?
Yeah, your favorite dad joke, and we're letting people know that you're also
I don't even know, I don't have a stable of them.
Okay.
I feel like I'm pretty good at coming up in the moment. You know what I mean? Literally today, someone was talking about Titanic, and I was like, I get that confused with The Sixth Sense because of the I See Dead people. That's
Are you proud of that one?
I am.
That's it.
Should I not be?
No, I think that's the whole thing about dad jokes. You have to stand behind them. Yeah. And you have to know.
I also feel like it takes, you have to be clever with them. And there's this understood idea that we're going to pretend they're bad, but they're really very good.
They're really witty.
You have to be clever. Yeah, witty. Yeah,
I think they're really good for that. So,
I See Dead people. You get it?
By the way, that is so typical for a dad. You got to go back and no, did you get it? You're not laughing as hard as I think you should be laughing. But I think the joke is icy. right? Like
That's right. Oh yeah, you were paying attention. Yeah. So in Titanic,
you speak. I speak dad.
yeah, right. I'm not even a father. It just comes
that.
naturally to me.
Oh wait, so you're like trying to co-opt our thing? Like,
Yeah,
it's a little.
I'm fine with that.
Okay,
if that's what you, if it's,
all right.
if it's
No, that's good. It's good.
cultural appropriation,
Right? It's like parenting appropriation. Let me just I'm not a dad.
Oh, are you canceling me right now?
I'm just taking a few notes here, sir. You cannot see my paper. I'm really happy you're here. I found you on Twitter, and what the stuff that you were saying for actors, not even about actors, but for actors, I think was so critical. Like it was your top 10 about being a theatrical agent from the beginning. We'll get to those. But I kind of want to level set. I want to just start with level setting. And I think the rumor or the myth out there is once an actor books, right? They book and then they're going to keep booking and they're going to book and they're going to book. And it's going to be that. And I was wondering, like, from your, few years as an agent, that if you can level set for us, what's the, like, let's just start hot. What's the trajectory really of a actor once they book? Is it book, or is it like, just tell us a little bit about that? By the way, he's 15 years in. Maybe 16 now.
Yeah. The answer is yes, right? Like, I mean, I'm going to tell you, like, I have had people who like get that first job and then just don't stop. Like they just keep booking. I have one person in particular. I signed her out of grad school. She went to UC Irvine. Her very first, she had never been on camera a day in her life. Her very first on-camera booking as a human being was a series regular on what was then called YouTube Red.
Yeah.
And but it was, immediately after that ran like, they got like 8 episodes or whatever. And then like after, like, kept booking, like never stopped, always was in the mix on like series regulars and recurring guests, and like is all over television. It's obviously pretty atypical, but it does happen. But more likely, the more common path is, there are ebbs and there are flows, there are peaks and there are valleys. And I think a lot of people, they think that there's going to be like this linear path, right? Like you see this a lot of times when people have been playing in the co-star market for a minute. Like they've booked their 3, their 4, their 5 co-stars, and like, I want to level up. And it's like, totally with you. And I think that, like, I do think it's smart to do that for a couple of reasons, but also it's going to be harder to book then. Like the reason that you're doing volume in the co-star game is because there's more of them and there are fewer talented actors, perhaps, maybe not fewer, but the talent jump into the guest star pool is significant, right? There's just much less dead weight in that pool. So so you're going to play around in there, and some people are like, man, now I haven't booked or I haven't booked as much, and so I need to make insurance, or I need to like get my confidence back or whatever. So we're like, let's open that back up again. Let's open co-stars back up again. Oh, so there's like level jumps, and there's like this idea of like you might go a few months where there's no bookings, or even nothing like really promising. Like sometimes you'll go months and there's not even like a pin or anything. It's just like, but that's part of it. And that's, I think, I'm a huge baseball fan, like kind of an obsessive baseball fan. And like, it's like when you see like minor league prospects and they go up to the big leagues and they're there for like a cup of coffee, like they're there in, for September call-ups, and maybe they have a couple of hits and that's exciting, but then the league figures them out, right? And like now they're striking out and they're not getting on base. So they get sent back down to the minors a little bit. It's the same like idea, not that you're in the minors, but like this idea of you're gonna get hot and then things are gonna cool down, and it's totally normal to have that. And I mean, we've also had people who, will book a series and then are not in the mix on another series for a while after that. So
what's a while?
It's all dependent. It's dependent on everything. I mean, when I say not in the mix, it's usually not going to be like years. Like it's pretty rare in my experience to get like, and listen, someone can definitely like sideways fluke into a series regular where like they needed, a one-armed juggler, and that's what you happen to be, and maybe you don't have quite the ability to like back that up. But even then, I find most people when you're at like number 4 on a call sheet, you better figure out how to act. Like you better figure out how to be on set and how to do that. And so I find most people do rise to that challenge. But yeah, it can be, I mean, typically I would say it's going to be, and it depends on the market, right? Like what there even is available. So, but yeah, I would say for the most part, like months, maybe a year, like would be really slow for most people.
This is a conversation that I think is so important because I was realizing when I was like thinking about our time together, like I know you do Q&As. I know you go around places and talk, not on you haven't been into Think Bigger coaching. We'll talk about that later, but you should have been here a lot sooner. You know what? Never mind. This isn't about me. But I think this is a conversation when I was thinking about like that we don't have agents side as much. And it could be because they're out there working. You know what I mean? That's maybe when I saw your thread, I was like, this is such a opinion aside that I don't know too much about. And I have great reps, right? And
I love your agent. He's a friend of mine.
He is phenomenal. I have really great, but I never really just sat with him and asked these kind of questions, And so when you say it's not linear, right? I believe it 120%. That's like what my manager said to me. She's like, Dajuan, we understand that careers aren't linear, but I don't think it's out there. This narrative is out there for actors. And what we see is the 0.4%, the Brad Pitts.
I would even go so far as to say that the people typically giving advice to actors don't know. I think that it's actually really common that the people who sort of make themselves available, the teachers, the a lot of the people in that space either only know the outliers or haven't really been in the market for a while, if at all, especially at the university level. But, even beyond that, like I find that there are a lot of people in the space and maybe they have they have a stable of clients and some of them have like had an upward trajectory, but they don't see the volume. They don't have they're not watching the market the way that we're watching the market, that the agents are watching the market. So I just have, as you mentioned, 16 years of experience on this side. And, I have hundreds and hundreds of auditions and thousands of auditions, hundreds of bookings, like all of these actors over the years. And I've been able to sort of get this sampling. And I'm also pretty scientific about my process. I'm a meticulous data tracker on my clients and on the market, on my buyers and everything. I love getting into the weeds on that stuff. So I do pay a lot of attention to
what? I'm so intrigued by this.
To the volume of guest stars versus co-stars, to the volume of if there's someone that I believe in and I'm submitting them and pitching them every time, I track how many times I submit and pitch people. So I'm looking back and I'm like, why was this a slow month for them? Was it because their category wasn't active, or what was it? Because I don't philosophically, I don't do type. It's just not part of my process. So it's not there were no people in that type that month. There were no characters that month. So it's just, to me, it's more was the market slow, or what is it? So I just really get into the weeds. I have historically tracked how I pitch and what works and what doesn't, what works with whom, with which buyers, with which casting directors, with which networks, with which studios. I'm constantly refining my pitches and what they just physically look like on the page. I'm now in a mindset where I always assume that someone's reading my pitches when they're sitting on the toilet. So everything's short sentences, scrolling down the page so they can there's a picture and there's some words. It's not wordy. It's not, because we've moved so far. We're not doing phone pitches like we used to for most of my career. So so much of it is online now. So much of it is through email. So it's just what does that look like? What is that experience like? How do I grab them right away? So I track this stuff meticulously. I try new things all the time as far as what's going to get me appointments. So I only bring that up to say, for me, I have this data set where I feel I can go back and look and be okay, here's sort of there's no typical career, but it is more common for someone to have those peaks and valleys like we talked about, which is okay, some things are going now and you can tell, you can feel it. There's a tangible feeling when someone gets hot. Right? When someone's just everything's kind of lining up, even if they're not booking, they're getting called into the same rooms, the feedback, we're actually getting feedback, which is always good feedback, because the worst feedback is no feedback. So or they're getting pinned or they're getting close or whatever. You can always, there's a tangible feeling to that. When someone's hot and we pin them on the wall, I'm okay, we're going to get them a series right now. So it's you can kind of see when that happens, but it's atypical. You know what I mean? It varies person to person, and sometimes it feels like there's very little rhyme or reason to it, to be completely frank.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about it and use words like the market or use words like buyers and use words like that, because I think actors on this side, we forget or we need to remember that this is the business.
Yeah.
And I wonder how you balance all these dreams and visions that people have with literally, you got a job. I mean, listening to you, it sounds like you're on Wall Street, but you have to be kind of, right? Like, like you don't, you're not sitting here with my hopes and dreams in your hand. You're like, oh, Dajuan and Susie and Joel and everybody's hope. I got to see this data. I'm really intrigued by that. How do you balance that?
Yeah, I'm actually really, really big on like my sort of like mission in addition to my agenting is to sort of treat artists, in particular actors, but artists in general, that this is a business and that your acting, if you will, is a product, and that there is a market for that product. There are buyers for that product, and the way that we approach this, basically, I'm your director of sales. Like your agent is your agents are your sales team. Your manager is basically your COO. Like that is like who's helping you run the business day to day and organizing the team, and and to me,
that needs to be a tweet. By the way, I just want you to know later that literally needs to be a tweet.
Yeah,
this is great. Keep
great.
going.
Yeah,
Sorry
yeah,
about
write that down. But yeah, so for me, like that's a huge mission out. Like if down the road I ever decide to pivot away from agenting, it's probably going to be into something like that, where it's just like teaching the business of this to not to artists, not just to actors. But it's a huge thing to me. Like, and I think about like the minute you decided to become a professional actor, the minute you did it, you became the owner of a small business, and that trickles down. It has effects in every part of, and I think every actor should, to some degree, honestly learn business skills. Like networking is a business skill. Running a team, managing your team, working with your agents, working with your managers is a business skill. Learning how to market your product is a business skill. When we talk about agents make 10%, and a lot of people like to say, well, then, you should be doing 90% of the work. I think that's a little oversimplification, but at the end of the day, it is like if you're running a business and you got to sell lollipops, right? You have to generate leads. Like, yes, I know the market, I know the lollipop buyers, but like we're sort of at the mercy of like, are they looking for this flavor of lollipop? Yeah. Whereas for you, it's just like, okay, well, how do I open up new markets? What do I create that's like different than the leading lollipop in on the market right now? Like, how do I create something that's unique, and how do I stay true to my vision? And I think that and then there are like the long-term things where it's just like, what is the mission? Like I think it's great to get into acting, especially when you're new at it, and think like, I just want to be on TV. I want to play characters. Like I get that, but then what? Like, what is the life you're trying to build? How are you trying to impact the world? And not everyone has that mission, but I resonate really well with actors who do. Actors who this is part of something that bigger that they're building, you know what I mean? And so for me, it is like, what separates your product from the rest of the lollipops on the market?
That's a big question, right? Yeah. That's a big
I'm
question.
glad I don't have to answer it, to be frank.
Well, you also do, but I think sometimes newer actors don't have that answer. No. You grow into that.
Nor do I think they should. Right, I mean, I think that that's a lot for like a 21-year-old fresh out of college. And
what do you want to do for the rest of your life? Who are you going to
be? Right. But I do think that like you can start to treat it like a business right away. You know what I mean? And I think the people who go the 4-year college route in particular, I have a growing frustration with.
I was going to say you've talked about this a couple times about university. How do you feel
I have
about
a growing frustration. I think that they don't really teach the business, and that's like I have a number of people I know who now run university programs or teach university programs, and I'm working with a number of them to like develop some sort of skill set. But when you get into academia, it's all politics, it's all red tape, and it's just hard for them to add that to the curriculum. But I do think that those skills are important. Just the entrepreneurial skills, like I said, networking and the marketing and the mission defining, like that can all come later. But I think you do need to learn financing, like budgeting, like very simple things where you do have to treat it. And I think that there's like this like emotional shift too, where it's like once you can begin to treat it like a job, it's only going to benefit, I think, the art. When you can kind of get that separation too, and you're not always in your head with the art part, because there is, in the best of careers, there's a bit of sitting around. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so you do have to figure out like how to be a human being, how to run a business, how to plan for the slower times with the budgeting, and how do you sell the product independently of like. My best actors are the ones who can hand me leads.
Yeah.
You know, the ones who are just like, oh, this casting director loves me. This producer loves me. I just did a film with this director. I reached out to this producer on social media. We have a relationship. And everyone's more accessible than they used to be. Not everyone is accessible, but to go to film festivals and like meet people and like put in the grind and then tell your team.
Yeah.
Because those are our leads. And that's the thing is, again, it comes back to if you were running a business and you needed to sell lollipops and no one was buying lollipops, are you just going to leave it to your director of sales? Like, that's your livelihood.
It's our business.
Because at the end of the day, you fire that director of sales, he's just going to go to another lollipop company. He can sell lollipops, right? That's how he got the job. But like, that's not going to help and maybe it will. I mean, sometimes a different salesperson, like a different agent will like figure it out in a way that your previous agent didn't. But the point is like, you still, I feel like, have to figure out the product and put work in on the business too.
Yeah, I think some of those schools, and they're teaching people like, these people work for you, and this is what, and I have always tried to come back to my tribe and say, here's the stuff I've learned, and as I go up, I call it sending the elevator back down. Right, I'm up on this floor, I'm going to send it back down, and I usually try to say, I don't know if you've heard this out there, but I said, I tend to get more traction when I don't think of them as working for me, but thinking about being one piece of this team.
Yeah.
And if you say team and you're not like, I'm gonna like fire and all this stuff, you just like work as a team, I think the synergy starts to happen and it gets out of this world. Like when I'm working with my team, manager, agent, it is like this wow moment when I realize, oh, we're a team. Here's what I've been doing. And it's not like go out there and ask what they've been doing. I'm just saying this is what I'm doing with the team right now. Do you know what I mean? Your face says it all.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And listen,
Anthony, don't act, okay?
Yeah,
don't be an actor.
No, I do. I completely agree, and I think those are the people that you're excited to work with too.
Yes.
Like you don't necessarily want someone micromanaging and just expecting you any job. I say this half jokingly, but there is some truth to it. Like I feel like a lot of actors, when you look at it on the paradigm of like they're running a business, a lot of actors are very bad bosses. You know what I mean? Like they don't give you any direction. They're like, here, sell these lollipops. I'm sorry to keep using this lollipop.
I mean, are you feeling lollipops? Like
I don't know. I've never used that as an example before.
Like you're using it a lot.
Yeah. I feel like we're locked in now.
Locked in. All right, cool. Right.
But yeah, so there's this idea of just like, here you go, and like they're not like checking in. They don't seem like actively interested in their own business.
Because the narrative is once you all come on, that you're supposed to save the day or save the world. Or
and the goal I think a lot of people teach is the end goal is getting the agent, right? So a lot of these where we talk about the people giving advice, like they give advice on how to get the yes, and then what? Like that's the thing. And listen, sometimes we can sell that product even without much help from the actor. Like it does happen, but I find that my actors who work steadily, my actors who work regularly, they maintain professional relationships. They're really good at that, actually. And I think when people hear networking, they think of very schmoozy, like the Hollywood parties, they're very slick.
But still,
I think they do.
I mean, come on.
In fact, I know that they do.
Oh, come on.
But it literally is just maintaining relationships.
It's saying hi.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just like, and not treating everyone like someone who can do you a favor and just approaching as a collaborator and actually just being a human being. And I know that's harder for some than others. I've worked with, like, for instance, neurodivergent actors who that does not come naturally, and they have to like find other ways to get that. And I don't have answers for that. But so I get that it's harder for some people than it is for others, but it is a job skill, and it's a job skill in any job. So yeah, when I talk about like many times they can be not the best bosses. They want you to work around the clock for them. They don't want to like contribute to the business, and they like it's so for that it's always like I just don't listen. Maybe some people respond to that. For me,
Yeah.
I would just rather, first of all, there's a lot of talent out there. I like working with people I like, you know what I mean? And I don't feel like life's too short. Like I feel like I don't need to surround myself with people who don't see it the way that I see it.
It's a vibe.
Yeah.
It is a total vibe. You know, I had been out there telling people that like gone are the days that we are, I call it the Meredith Grey Post-it note because she used to have this thing where she's like, pick me, choose me, love me. And I'm like, if you go to an agent or a manager right now, like don't go with that Post-it note, go with I'm a brand. I'm a booker. People know me. Here's what I've done instead of the other way. And I think that can be everybody. Well, if I'm just starting out, what do I do? But here's the thing. You can know all of that stuff when you're just starting out. Yeah. And, you know, nobody's like, I don't want to work with a development actor. Well, you don't have to. Right. I think you can have all those things in place. But it's just this conversation is kind of blowing my mind. And I'm like thinking back to past relationships that I've had with team members, you know, that have been just so great. I've always considered myself a really great boss, or a great team player in there. It's just, it's big for me. I want to know that as you talk about, you know, we've level set on an actor's career. It's not linear. You know, we know how you feel about universities now.
I feel like maybe we've gotten a little extreme. Like I think they're pretty good. I see so many actors who come out and it's just like, oh, no, come on. You could have taken these classes in 6 months at Playhouse West and been working the rest of the time. I don't know.
It is hilarious. You just said in 1 month, you're like, all right, calm down. We're getting too far. But
we haven't gone far enough.
We haven't gone far enough. You know, so I wonder, like, if, you know, anybody listening to this, like, how do you gain traction then? You talked about, like, there's this, like, can you put a finger on the je ne sais quoi? Can you put, like, maybe this person has more spreadsheets, or can you, like, how do you gain traction as an actor then, or is it just this crapshoot you're kind of talking about?
No, it's definitely not a crapshoot. It is definitely, and everyone's different. Again, like businesses succeed in different ways all the time. Some people are very type A. They like to have the spreadsheets. They like to like, I spoke to this person on this day and this happened and that happened. And some people wing it a little bit more, or just it's more of a gut feel. I don't think that there's one way to do it. Okay. I do think that when you can, and listen, there's definitely some luck in what opportunities show up and when, right? Let's be really frank about that. Like sometimes, like there just are no roles for you at that time, whether that's because they're getting offered out to people, whether that's because you're not a known commodity in the marketplace yet, whether that's because casting or producers or someone along the lines doesn't think you're quote unquote right for, like we've had people where we super believe in them and then like every pitch, it's like, we don't think that's quite right. And then you see who books it, you're like, are you sure they weren't quite right? It's just like, I'm pretty sure he was quite right. Yeah. It does happen. So I don't want to completely disclude that there's some luck, but I think a lot of people like to hide behind that because I do think
luck, just
behind
to be clear.
Luck, yeah. Okay. Or behind the number of opportunities, because I do feel like even in those periods when there aren't a lot of opportunities or a lot of them are not going your way, you can be doing that work that we were talking about. So I think for an actor, I think you can, first of all, just be ready for the opportunities that do come. So if I'm pitching, and I pitch on every project that comes across my desk, every single one. So if I'm pitching and we're getting no, and we finally get that yes, and you go in and you do not, you're unprepared, or maybe you're just not in the habit of auditioning, whether that's in person or now, you know, with self-tapes, it's so hard to get you in again. Yeah. Like the first time is hard. The first time is hard for me. The second time is hard for you. You have to earn that. I've had, you know, you sign a client, you think they're amazing, and you get them into every room in town once, and they don't get called back into anything, and you know what's happened. Luckily, now in the self-tape era, we can see the tapes. So now we're in a perfect world where we can kind of. That's, I think, the one really nice. The biggest nice part for reps is we watch every tape. Yeah. So like I know, like, and listen, I'm not an acting teacher. I don't necessarily know like this is gonna book or this is me. You should go and, you know, redo this with this. No, like I do my best, but like that's not my world. But you can tell if someone's unprepared. You can tell if someone is phoning it in, if you can tell if someone doesn't really care. So there's a lot of things we can tell. And I think that's when I see actors in that space, I think it's time for a frank conversation. And it's time to...
Who's Frank? Who's Frank?
Oh, did I give away his name? My client, Frank Conversation. But I think, then it's time to like be like, listen, are you sure you want to do this? Are you in a good space for this? And I'm a big advocate actually of like, if you need time off from the business, and I think sometimes people do, you should take it.
Yeah.
Like, because if you turn in subpar work, you are burning yourself like down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It's very difficult for people. People don't have time. They don't have time to take a chance a lot of the times.
Yeah.
And so when you talk to casting and their last experience is this really, half-assed tape that you turned in, it's just hard to get them. Maybe there's going to be a project where they have a little bit of space and they can do, what back in the day, the pre-read. Like now, maybe they'll take the tape because usually they're a little more, they'll usually take the tape now if you really push for it. But it's harder. It's just harder if you've established, it doesn't even have to be like a pattern. Honestly, it can be one tape where you're just like, you just don't give it.
Anthony, I want to be clear about what you're saying though, because I make sure you're saying if this person does not have a body of work also, because we're not talking about a bad day. Right?
Correct.
Like if I have if a person out there or actor has a bad day,
and I'm also not even talking about a bad audition. I'm talking about like unprepared.
Okay, great.
I'm like talking about like, you can tell when someone is really just mailing it in.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're gonna miss the mark. Sometimes it's gonna like your tone is way off. Sometimes it's just a bad day. And you're right. When there's a body of work, that helps. But I'm especially talking about like offices that don't know you or that have a tenuous relationship with you and don't have a working relationship with you. But that's these days where you're not going into the room. That is one of the downsides where it is harder to build those relationships if they're not booking you. And even then, like sometimes casting directors, I mean, they're not really going on set as much as they used to. And so like it has become a little bit harder to build those relationships, or I should say a little bit different to build those relationships than going in the room and having that minute where it's like, oh, right, Dajuan, So yeah, it's everything's shifted a little bit. It's not, everyone's got their own opinion on whether the current system is better or worse. I don't need to get into that.
What current system are you talking about?
Oh, the self-tape system.
Oh, self-tapes.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
Oh, are we going to bring that up?
But since you navigated into this landmine.
Sure.
With the current system that's out there right now. Listen, I'll go first.
Yeah.
I think that, I'm piggybacking off of what you just said, I have a program, I've talked about it on my podcast many times, called Self-Tapes at Book. And it's not just about self-tapes, it's about all the booking methods and the stuff you need to be prepared so you can go into these rooms. It's nothing about like just set up your equipment and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that self-tapes do, by the way, I'm going to be frank with you. I am one of those people who benefited from being in the room, honestly. I'm one of those actors who had, built up their career and, my perception is getting in that room, got that 1 minute you're talking about, right? That's it. But I also understand that self-tapes for everyone out there, like people like to hire people they know. When you're let's just be honest. And what self-tapes do is it truncates that time of me knowing you. I can see you a little bit more times, or I can see somebody who's in Austin. I can see somebody in his other place, and it's a little bit more equitable for me. And it gives me my life back. You know what I mean? Because I couldn't leave this world like Los Angeles. So for me, I get what's happening here, meaning that I should be back in the rooms, but I also feel like this has opened up our industry in a beautiful way.
I agree.
Maybe you don't feel that way.
No. I disagree. I agree with you.
I mean, which is it? Because I disagree. No, okay.
So I disagree that I disagree. So I don't know how dated this is going to be. I feel like by the time this releases,
I'm going to release this podcast tomorrow.
Great.
Tomorrow.
It's live. We're live streaming right
now.
But let me. So the current conversation right now in this very moment is, should casting directors open up the rooms again, and should actors go back into those? What has really interested me about this dialogue particularly
Before
online.
you start, Anthony, I want to make sure that we are recording this in March right now. So I want to save space for Anthony to have an opinion change later, for me to have an opinion change when more information comes out. I just want to give us that whole space for that.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So go ahead, Anthony.
Yeah, and that's generally true. Like everything is of this very moment. But the conversation, the dialogue I see seems so, can I say dumb? It seems dumb to me.
You said it.
Yeah. It feels dumb because I feel like I see all of these people as if it's like this either or question. And I personally, again, listen, I love being able to see my clients' tapes. I love being able to give the little bit of direction we're able to give when we're able to give it. I love being able to pitch more people in because it's a lesser commitment for a casting director than hiring a room for an extra, 10 minutes and a reader and having another tape to put together and label and all of that. Like I love on our side, there's more efficiency to it. I love that. However, I don't see anything wrong with opening some rooms, but then doing both. Because we did that before the pandemic. You know what I mean? Like we had a lot of people taping. I had a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I had a number of people who didn't live in Los Angeles or who were bi-coastal, who were, shooting a movie somewhere, who were on set somewhere, like who would do a tape and send it in and it would be viewed, because at the end of the day, it's tapes going to the producers anyway. So what's the difference on what the background of the room is, So for me, I find these people who are like ridiculing the actors who want to get back in the room, and it's just like, I don't know, let them get back in the room. I don't think that it should become mandatory. Yeah. I think it would actually be a huge mistake for it to become mandatory. I think, but I do a brisk theater business also. I'm one of the few agents in Los Angeles who really does quite a bit of theater, and we have seen the opposite problem there, where everything's going back into
brisk
the room.
Theater. What does that mean? Like a brisk?
I know. Yeah. We have.
What does it mean?
We have a lot of people. I have 13 people on Broadway or in First National tours. Like we do a lot of.
Got it.
We do a lot of theater.
Okay.
It's like the opposite problem where we're seeing they're resistant now to self-tapes. They want everyone back in the room. I had one casting director say, "Oh, actually, the director is burned out on self-tapes," and I just thought, like, well, that sucks for him, doesn't it? Like, for 3 years, you forced everyone to figure out how to be their own gaffer and their own set designer and their own, like you forced them to invest in equipment and to find a tape and to find something that would work for them. And now you're saying, all right, thanks for nothing, but now we need you to fly to New York to be in this audition. And I think that's really awful. Right. I think that's really terrible. Because at the end of the day, I just don't think it adds anything. Right. And, again, I'm not in casting. I don't know that dynamic in the room, but everyone I talk to is kind of like you were, just like, learn how to book off of the self-tape then. Yeah. Because you can control so much more, and you don't have to drive to Santa Monica at 5 o'clock in the afternoon and, park at 8 blocks away from Fox and have to walk, take the shuttle or walk across the street. And like those things are gone, which is great. But again, if someone wants to do that, I think we should give them the option. And it would be such smaller sessions now. I think that the upfront cost would be less, but also everyone's pinched for money, whether I agree with that or not. They don't want to spend the money. Let's put it that way.
There it is.
So I get, like, if casting's like, listen, we can't afford, or it's usually not them, it's usually production. It's like, we're not going to pay for this room, then they're not going to pay for the room, so you have to learn to self-tape anyway. So I don't have a problem with a hybrid. I don't have a problem with, my problem is I see a lot of actors and casting directors fighting right now, and the only person I think that benefits is the AMPTP. I think that with all of these negotiations coming up with the writers and with the directors, any sort of like conquer and divide strategy, I think is a really bad policy. Yeah. So I would prefer to see...
good policy for them.
Well, right, yeah, for them, exactly. So I would prefer to see us like acknowledge, like, listen, there are going to be some different viewpoints on this. There can be hybrid options, whatever. But at the end of the day, if it's self-tapes, it's self-tapes. We've been doing it for 3 years, and like it's a relatively low cost entry, I feel like. Now, the space part, not having a reader, whatever, I feel like that's all stuff that can be figured out. But if you can't, then maybe there's an option where you can go in and do that.
Hey, actor, are you constantly questioning what it takes to stand out in your self-tapes? Wondering if your backdrop's color really matters? Or should you or shouldn't you use props in your audition? Or maybe, what are casting directors really looking for in those first crucial 10 seconds? Hey, it's Dajuan, the self-tape guy, and I've got you covered. After surveying 800 actors in my self-tape challenge, I've compiled their top 10 questions into an exclusive playbook just for you. No more guesswork, no more uncertainty, and certainly no more stress. Get those answers you need to elevate your self-tapes at www.selftapeplaybook.com. I got equipment, I talk about props, wardrobe, and eye lines. I got you covered. It's high time for your self-tapes to stop being an obstacle to booking your dream role. Let's bring the joy of acting back into your life. Head on over to selftapeplaybook.com today, right now, so you can share in this success.
I have been saying this for 3 years now. For 3 years back in 2020, when I started Self-Tapes at Book, I was shifting over it from 2019 because I had seen a lot more self-tapes coming in back in 2019. So that's pre-pandemic. Yeah. When I was on set of Bosch, there was something to come in. We'd have to shoot it in a trailer if I wanted to go in for that.
For me, back to 2017, but yeah.
Yeah, or when I was on set, then I would have to get off and go to a place and shoot because I couldn't make the call during that time, And so for me, this world was on its way anyway. I will say I love the narrative has shifted because besides those points I just made, self-tapes during that time was like, what, I can't get in the room?
Oh, yeah. That is funny.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Back then it was like, I can't get in the room. It's like, no, you can't get in the room because you have this. But, I have been saying, this goes back to your point about who you follow. Whether these people are, we'll just say universities lightly, or, coaches that have not been there and they're assuming and making things up. I try to only talk about things that I have been through or that, I've heard from, like I heard from Anthony or from somewhere else. This is what I've heard. And I say this about self-tapes. You can literally, everybody's like, don't use a ring light. Use this circle in your eye, or don't. And I say, let me tell you something, y'all. If they're looking at the little ring light, the circle in your eye, you have already lost. You are done already. So don't worry about that stuff. You can get something for under $100 and do that, or go to a self-taping service. I personally go to self-taping services because I have a busy life.
Yeah.
Then I just I need you where I need you to be there, and so that's why I do it. But I think it's interesting, this conversation that's going on, and I am a mindset coach. I am focusing on getting my tribe, hopefully, to focus back on that, and this is bigger than our vision. I mean, this is not bigger than our vision,
right?
Or bigger than our dream is what
this is not bigger than anything. This is such a small.
No, they're
part
fighting
of it.
online.
I know. It is online. Yeah, it is such a small thing to be fighting about, and it's. I mean, that's online, right?
Yeah.
Is everyone will jump onto the same thing and with these visceral opinions, but to me, it's just like I don't care. I do, but at the end of the day, it's nothing's going back to in the room. Mm-hmm. Let's just say that. I don't care how upset people get. They're not going to start spending that money again. Mm-hmm. At least not anytime soon. Maybe there's this amazing windfall down the line where producers want to start spending money again. I'll be shocked, but who knows, right? Yeah. We can't predict the future. But they've been saving money for 3 years now on not having that space. And if I'm a casting director and I don't have to hire a reader and I don't have to put on pants and go to a room and sit there all day and be my own camera operator and all of this, I'm kind of loving that.
Yeah.
I can actually focus on my lists. I can actually focus on negotiations. I can actually focus on bidding for jobs. I can actually focus on living my life and having my life on top of that. So to me, it just seems like this thing that we're all fighting about, where it's at the end of the day, it's sure, let's do a hybrid option if we can, but figure it out. I just think that the self-tape thing is here to stay, and I think fighting it is not advantageous.
I think so too. One of the things I saw again on Bosch were our producers were they're shooting on set, literally on set, and they have to go to do this. It's a time suck for them. They want to watch to get their show created, and then they have to leave. Or when they were watching it on their phones, by the way, while they were in between, takes and stuff like that. I saw it literally, oh gosh, they're looking at new tapes for the next episode, but they don't want to leave and do that thing. And so it takes that away.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's a great point. Yeah. They can be anywhere.
Yes.
They can be in, that shot here. But like, what about things that shoot out of town, or shoot overseas even?
Right.
Like it is a great luxury. I don't know, luxury is even the word. It is very practical for the producers to be able to put their time into their product, not into yours.
And it keeps up with the time, I have to say. Like it helps evolve and stuff like that. Well, that's a decent way of. I'm glad we got to hear your perspective on that. If I can shift back a little bit to team, right? Like to just thinking about, because I got you and I don't want to let you go. I want about team. I wonder if actors are asking the right questions to their team.
They're not.
So my question then, it literally was coming out of my mouth, y'all, and it was like, nope. Would you like a do-over? And I wonder then, what is, in your mind, some of those right questions that we should be starting with?
Yeah, I think some actors, let me rephrase. I think some actors really
There's no going back.
Understand it. Well,
I mean, it's on tape.
Well, I'm going to walk out. Now.
Right. I got that moment.
I think some actors they do understand sort of how that approach is. And I think for most actors, the right questions to me are like, what can I be doing? Or what feedback are you getting, if any? Understanding that we typically don't get a lot of quote unquote feedback, by which I mean like actionable feedback. Right. Most of the feedback is not right for this, or
not
we're going in another direction. Yeah. And if we do get actionable if you have a rep that is getting actionable feedback and not giving it to you, that is a nightmare scenario. And I don't think that happens very often, because it doesn't benefit us either. So I think for me, actors who want to try to understand the market better, where they should be putting their resources, like, okay, are there casting directors I should meet? Are there people who are resistant to me? Are there or even like what plan? Like what's the plan? Like I think for some actors, I don't think this is universal, but I think for some actors having, this is a big industry, and I think being able to break it down into like 5 or 6 like goal shows and like really just like doubling down on those shows, it's going to benefit all the other stuff too. Like if you can have like a hyper focused approach for some people, that works really, really well, even if we don't end up booking those shows. Like back in the day, I had a client who like all she wanted to do was book Bones. She just wanted to book Bones. And she got called in for it like every month, but in like more and more like training to be like all of her training focused on Bones, and all of her like headshots focused on, like everything was like geared toward like, I'm going to get on this show. And she booked like 7 or 8 shows on the way, and then ended up doing Bones also. Yeah. But like, it was just this idea of like finding a way to get focused. So I think for me, it can be, I think the most beneficial is like, hey, listen, like, I know you're doing your job. What feedback are you getting from the market? Where should I be putting my attention, my resources? And I think it's going to be different for like a newer actor, a more developmental actor, as opposed to someone who's sort of mid-career, maybe someone who's had some guest stars, who's got a trajectory. What do you consider
development actor? I'm sorry, I want to.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know that I have a hard and fast rule for it, but for me, it is someone where it's just like, I don't believe we're not getting consistently. Getting like guest star auditions necessarily. There's something about the package that's lacking, whether that is the headshots or whether that's the tape or whatever it is. Like for developmental, I mean, you can have a few credits and still be developmental. But yeah, typically for me, it's someone that I feel like there's still some part of we don't have a complete package yet that we can take out. And like my best clients are the ones I call casting, or I email casting, hey, what do you think about Dajuan? And it's a yes or no question. Yeah. I don't have to sell you. You know what I mean? And then if it's a no, then I start to sell. Like that to me is it's a different vibe than like someone who's like fresh out of school or fresh to Los Angeles and that we're trying to like get up and running. But yeah, that's the other part of development too, is like I feel like there's not like a stable of offices that know you yet. Yeah. Everything kind of feels. What about the
market? Like, what if you're like if you're in no offense to anybody out there, but we're just saying other markets like New Orleans or Austin, and what if you tore up the town in Austin or you tore up the town in Atlanta, but now you're coming to one of these bigger, I guess, could you use some of that stuff?
I guess it depends on how much you tore up the town. I think I see a lot of people out of the Southeast market who move here and they're right. They're promoting like I booked all these things and I did these guests and like that's awesome. Like good for you. I don't want to take that away from you, but it doesn't carry as much water because at the end of the day, my buyers still don't know you. I've got a body of work I can show them. I've got some tape, some good tape. So we got that part of the puzzle locked out. That I know I can pitch that you can be on set. Like I know those parts of the puzzle. But at the end of the day, like Bob Jones, casting director, still doesn't know you, and so it's still that first yes is pretty hard for a lot of, especially for a lot of CDs when you don't like. There are CDs where it's like I'm not always going to get the yes, but I can lean on them a little bit. They're friends. Like we have a long, very good relationship and like they are going to give me the benefit of the doubt more often than not. And then there are the CDs that are not that. And that's going to be true in any business where, it's just harder to get in. So when no one really knows you, like it's just harder to like get you in. So with those actors, I think it's great. I think, if you are coming from a smaller market and moving to Los Angeles or New York, and hoping that translates, I think many of those skills do. I think it's definitely better than coming with nothing. Right. But it's not usually going to be like a 1-for-1 swap either.
So then sorry to interrupt your awesome train of thought, but I was like, what is the development? Like, is it actor as you were answering the right questions to be asking? Right. And I think some of those questions were answered in that pocket for me, but are there any of those, I like to think, I don't silence, you can ask for what you want without feeling needy. And that's the thing, or being needy. And so you almost touched on a thing that probably is one of Dajuan's pet peeves. And it is, I don't think nobody in my circles who, as we're coming up, that are still booking, that are where I'm going, are asking about submission reports. And I was like, where did you guys get this thing? Who is out there saying, show me a record of what you're doing for me? And what if, I always say to them, what if that agent or manager said to you, show me a record of the things I've sent you out on and you haven't booked? Like how would you?
Yeah, well, we do say it internally in our heads. And I think too, like a submission report, if I was an actor, that would depress me.
I don't need it.
I don't know what you do with that. And I like, to me, that is a lot of negative feedback that I don't really wouldn't know how to process. Right. Because you're submitted a lot. Even bookers, even people who get out pretty regularly, there's a lot you don't get out.
I don't even like this conversation right now.
Right. Yeah.
This is making me think about it.
So I don't know who's telling actors this. And listen, we send it. If you ask for it, I send it with no comment. We just print it out and send it. I don't care. Use with it what you will. It's your business. Here's the submission report. I don't care. I'm not precious about, I'm doing my job. And I wonder too, sometimes I do wonder if it's some micromanaging thing where you just want to make sure that there's
the thing out there, people are saying it. People are out there saying, hey, if you're not getting auditions, ask for a submission report. And I think that is a little bit of a misfire. I think if you can say, like you said, hey, which was really beautiful. And everybody go back. I meant to stop it for a second and say this, but you were like, are you sending me out there? And what are you hearing from the buyers? Right. Are there people who have resistance against me? Is a little bit of a better question than, can I get a piece of paper that shows the last 100 people you sent me to and I'm not getting in? Yeah. Right. And it I think it helps, all this whole conversation for me, it helps build team instead of us against them, us against casting director, us against self-tapes, us against producer, us against agents. Yeah. For me, that's
I think I was going to mention this earlier, but I think also so many actors are afraid of their agents and they're so afraid of the team and of maybe ruffling feathers. So they don't, there is this almost transactional piece to, or a transactional attitude toward it. For me, again, I feel like the people I work best with, it is a team. It is we are in this together. How can we problem solve? How can we get through whatever walls? And so I think framing the questions in that way, because the other thing with a submission report is, I'll be completely honest, the way that I always read it when someone does ask, it feels like you're looking over my shoulder. It feels like you don't trust me, and trust is a big thing. So for me, and like you said, we send you out on things that you don't book all the time. So, you know, it's this idea of like, I don't know, almost like trying to pass blame, it feels like. And maybe it isn't always. Maybe there is a legitimate reason. I don't know. I've never had, that I can recall in 16 years, I can't recall one time where an actor asked for a submission report and 3 months later we were booking like crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, I'm not sure what's actionable about that.
What are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Like, what are you, like, besides, are you, like, I don't know what you're going to do with that.
Well, sometimes I have asked that. I'm like, okay, I'll send it to you, but I'm curious, like, what question are you actually trying to answer?
That's good. That's good.
And I don't think they always know. And when they have answered, it's something along the lines of like, well, I just want to see if there's a casting director who's not calling me. And it's like, yes, all of them. Like, that's why, like, I don't understand. Like, you know what
Anthony,
I mean?
you're a gangster. Obviously, let me just show you who's a little
right. Yeah, like, are you getting called in? None of them are. Like, it's a very strange approach.
You think about a dot matrix. Do you remember that? Like that, those printers are like,
oh yeah,
and it's just like, hold on, let me just print it, and you just have this sound going. No, still waiting. No.
Yeah.
It's great, man. All of them
faxing it over,
right? It's like all going on.
Yeah, it's like the end of the
One
Usual
of 24
Suspects,
pages.
just coming in so slow, a line at a time.
I think the actors do it. I'm laughing, but I think that I really believe this as a coach, that if we're doing so many things to be out of desperation.
Yeah.
And I believe that if desperation is the driver of your career, where do you think it's going to end up?
Yeah.
It's going to end up with a team not liking you. It's going to end up with a career you don't want. It's going to end up in this place. And it's just like crappy. And I'm like, we got to stop doing desperate things. Gone are the times where we have the mindset of our past actors. Like, it's like, we got to be starving. We got to be struggling. We don't have to do any of that.
I agree.
Stuff.
I think there is a general problem through, God, I'm going to come back to universities.
I knew it.
A lot
Guys,
of
I knew he was going to come back.
programs,
It was either lollipops or
But
community.
I do feel like a lot of training programs, a lot of things actors do before they get to Los Angeles, like the market is designed, like is really not empowering at all. So I think a lot of actors get here and they feel like someone's doing them a favor by giving them an audition or signing them as an actor, you know, an agent signing them. They feel like they're asking, like they're going around hat in hand and that they're at the bottom of the totem pole. And I fundamentally do not believe that. I actually believe the actors are at the top of the totem pole. Like, as far as this business goes, like everyone needs the actors. It really revolves around actors.
Isn't that weird? That the way, like, that they're thinking, like, we are all the way down here and you come in and you say we all need them.
Yeah.
I wonder where that, you used the word transactional relationship came from, right? And I'm like, is it like, raw, they're mean, or like, or do you think agents are?
No, I just think that it's just a relationship where they only touch base when they need something, rather than like having a relationship where we are working together to build a business or to build a career.
Wow.
I think when I only hear from people when they need something, I assume that there's a problem. Like, and so and I've always made it like,
we all pull out our phones, y'all, and text our.
I know, I'm gonna get so many emails from my clients like, "Hey, just wanted to."
I literally was thinking of Matt at this time. I was like, Matt, I'm just gonna. I just want to say to everybody, I want to hear what you have to say on this, Anthony. I just also, it's not that I don't like to be bothered. I know that my team is awesome. And so, like, we are going, they're moving their thing. I'll bring them stuff. And so, but it's a new way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Right. What you're saying. It's like, it feels more business also, but like a heart-centered business.
Yes.
That's the way I want to say it.
Yeah. No, it definitely is. Right. Like, we aren't making lollipops. Like, we are artists. Like, I'm not, but like it is an art form.
Yeah.
And yes, there is commerce to it. And I think we have to understand that. But also, it's personal. Like, you are selling you. Like, let's be real about it. Like, yes, you're creating characters. Yes, there's a business to it. But at the end of the day, I do understand why it's personal.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's your name. It's not even Dajuan Johnson, like, acting.com, right? Like, it is you. Right. And so I try to be really cognizant of that, but also understanding, like, you know, I just feel like it's better when we're working towards something rather than, I don't like actors who are afraid to who are afraid to check in with me. I like actors who reach out and say, hey, listen, I met these people. I did this, I did that. Like, just let me know. Because that helps me. Again, you're generating leads. And if you're afraid to give them to me, I have a lot of actors where like I'll send an audition and they're like, oh, I know this director. Like, well, that would have been nice to know. It would have been a lot easier to get this audition. So this idea that like we're in these two isolated, separate worlds, I think it was maybe like that for a while, to be honest with you. I think maybe there was
actors past. We're thinking of like, that's the consciousness of like 20, 30 years ago, where it's like, don't call me, I'll call you type thing. But now we're building a brand together.
Yeah.
And I think when we build this brand together, like, it's like, I want you to be around for a very long time.
Yeah.
That's just, I'm having all these like ahas over here.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty deep. Like, it was maybe like that before.
Yeah, it definitely was. Like the agents that I worked under when I was an assistant, like they were very old school. I mean, they really came from a different time era, and it was that where it's like they did not want to be bothered. So I do understand where that's coming from when I really sit down and think about it. But I feel like I really try to set expectations, and I really try to set the tone when I decide to work with somebody. And I want them to be able to dream, and I want them to be able to like in every representation meeting I have, I ask some question like, what do you want this all to look like? Yeah, and the number of people who answer that in a way that's almost like asking permission to dream rather than saying like, hey, listen, like, here's the kind of stuff I want to be working on, or this is like, I would love to have a TV series and do, movies in the hiatus, or do a Broadway show every year, or 6 months, whatever. Like those, I think it's so or these people who like, contrasting that with the people who like seem to they're just trying to get the yes. They're just trying to get the agents. They're trying to say the right thing. When we see this, you see it, I'm sure, when you're coaching, like we see this with auditions where it's like people are just trying to do it right.
Do it right.
And you will almost never book that way. Like you gotta have a point of view. You gotta take up space. And
now Anthony's deep. I'm getting chills over here. I'm getting chills over here with this. No, that is good.
Yeah, I think but to me, I do think that like we really do our best, understanding we're very busy. But I really try to do my best to empower actors. And so when you mention like my Twitter and like when I do those things, like for me, it really is, I'm just trying to give actors a glimpse inside of like what we're doing. When I was coming up as an agent in particular, I found so many of my colleagues were so cynical. They didn't want to be like, they didn't want to interact with their talent at all, really, outside of the confines of the business. And I just felt like there were, I don't know, I feel like, and when they did, it was always, negative or pessimistic. And I really wanted to, my goal is to empower actors and to say like, again, you are running a business. You are vital to this industry. And we're here to service that. We're here to help build the brand that you want to build. I can't do it for you. Sometimes a manager can be a little more involved in that process, but as an agent, like I just don't have the time for that. And so it's to me helpful, whatever I could do to sort of empower people and to give them that sense. Because, again, when I say actors are taught like they're sort of at the bottom of this totem pole, it goes deeper than that. Like a lot of people in this town are they're made to feel like they shouldn't take up space. And I think what I really love when we talk about like when you see an actor get hot or whatever, that's what I like to see, is that transformation where suddenly they're like sitting up, like they're in their space. They feel like it feels like they're no longer hiding from the world, and it feels like they're an active participant in their career. I love that moment when that happens.
It's so interesting. One of the things I heard louder in the day when you were just talking was that you start becoming the yes that we're looking for instead of the career, instead of the dream anymore. It's like, once we can just get this yes with this, it's agent, then that is all that matters. So when we come into a room and you're like, you ask us about us, we're like, but I thought you were going to tell me what I needed.
Yeah.
And I've told this story so many times on this podcast, but one of the most pivotal moments, I think, in my career was when my current agent, we went into the room when we were signing, and he said, hey, hold on for a second. And he walked out and he came back in with all 12 agents of that thing. And they all sat around this conference table, and they all looking at me at the head of this conference table, like you're saying, and they said, "What do you want to do next, Dajuan? We saw you on Grays. We know you did Bosch." And so like, "What do you want to do next?" And in that moment, I had rehearsed this moment.
Yeah.
Everybody knows what Dajuan wants to do next from this moment on. That I want to be on a vampire show. That I want to be on Marvel. I want to do something with sci-fi.
I love that.
I am very upfront, and I was like, now what we hear, other people hear is, but I can't do NCIS or I can't do other stuff. I'm not saying that.
Right.
You're asking me, what do I want to do next? You can send me all the other stuff, but I know that my dream is to be on X.
The best answer I ever got from that was from an actress I met with, and I asked her that question, and she was like, "I want them to do I want them to reboot The Office, and I want to be Dwight Schrute." I got it immediately. I knew exactly how she saw her career, you know? And you're right. Like, yeah, of course we're not gonna ignore everything else and wait for an Office reboot. But like, we understand, like, okay, it's a North Star, right? I'm fond of saying this. It's a bit like, if you drop me off next to, or if you drop me off in Seattle, Washington, and say, meet me at the top of the Empire State Building, I don't know how I'm going to get there, but I'm going to figure out a way to get there, right? Like, I'm going to take a plane, or I'm going to get on a bus, I'm going to drive a car, I'm going to figure out how to get from Seattle, Washington to the Empire State Building, and I'm going to meet you there. But if you drop me off right next door to the Empire State Building and don't tell me that's where we're meeting, I'm never going to see you there.
You're not going to know.
And so figure out like, what is the Empire State Building for you? And like, and I think that's the thing, is like, if I know where we're going now, if I'm coming from Seattle, Washington, we're going to have detours. We're going to go, maybe go see, Mount Rushmore on the way. We're going to go spend a little time, in this nice little,
Denver,
exactly. Yeah. Like it's we're going to have some adventures on the way, but like, we're going to the Empire State Building. Whereas again, if I'm right next door to the Empire State Building, but I don't know that's where we're meeting, we're never going to get there.
I think we lose sight of the dream. I think I want to.
Or they don't allow themselves to dream, I think, a lot of the time.
I think you had to start with a dream, right? And then all of a sudden your goal just becomes getting an agent or getting a manager and booking something. That's
a good point.
I don't even think it is like just give me anything so I can validate that I'm an actor. And that dangling carrot, that's a whole nother talk.
Yeah.
Before I land this plane, I wanted to talk about your Twitter. So everybody out there, go talk about this Twitter. He's going to keep it pinned for a little bit. This like thing.
For you, I pinned it for you.
Pinned it for me, and I couldn't get to it because we got to such other great things. I don't even know if this is a great question here, but it's in my mind, and it might be a hot button for you. So it's okay if you don't want to answer it. But I'm wondering, sometimes I hear a lot about, when is it time to leave my agent? When is it time to level up? And I have a story before I got with this awesome agent before. To be very honest, the one right before was awesome too.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I cried when I had to leave said agent. I bawled, and I was bawling on the phone because I still love that agent, and I love my current one, if you're listening, but the relationship, but I just had to make this jump. And so I don't even know if there's a real question in there, but like, when, as Anthony looks at me, y'all, is that fair? Like,
it is fair. I'm gonna say this. I'm fresh off of one of these.
Oh,
literally not last night, but the night before.
He said he was gonna walk out, y'all. This might be it.
I was speaking to someone in my office today. I was like, I'm doing this podcast today. I'm gonna try not to sound bitter and cynical.
And here we are.
There's no. Here's the thing about our job, about my job. I can get fired for being too good at it. Right? If I can get you like a series, if I can get you that big thing, you're going to look to, like, quote unquote, to use your words, level up. And I really do understand.
That's so awful. I should not have used that word, by the way.
But you're not the only one to use it. Like, a lot of people do. And by the way, like, I've had opportunities to work at those larger agencies, and I don't, like, to me, that's not the culture I want to be a part of. But I understand that then the trade-off is sometimes people are going to want the resources of an agency that size. I get it. It's hard. It's difficult because so much has to be. It's a decision that I understand has to be made in the moment before it's too late, right? And so it's not like my instinct is always like, well, like, I'm doing really well. Like, we haven't, like, give me the opportunity to fail. But also, like, if we do that, then we fail. Like, I can't, like, so I do understand it. But on my side,
which I've never heard, by the way. This is really.
And on my side, by the way, sometimes people graduate to me. By the way, like, I'm not at the bottom of that, thankfully. I'm in the middle somewhere. So I've seen it from both sides. it stinks, man. It's like the worst part of this business. Like I said, it's this thing where you can get fired from this job for being too good.
I've never heard it said that way.
Yeah.
That is so great.
And it stinks. There's no other way to put it. And it hurts, and it does feel personal, especially when you have a succession of them. Sometimes that'll happen where you have 5 or 6 people, and it's like, man, like it's just like getting punched in the gut over and over. It's hard.
Yeah.
And this actor the one recently, on the phone, they're saying like, you're my dream agent, and like I consider you a friend. It's like, are you? Do you? Because you're firing me. But I do understand like such an emotional thing, and I don't. And I try to end it well whenever, but it hurts.
Yeah.
It's the same way where, when you get dropped, like you can actually be doing pretty well and still get dropped by an agency.
It's happened.
Yeah.
I got dropped in the middle of Bosch.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And so that can happen. And there is the business level to it, the business aspect to it. However, it does, like it stinks. I'm not going to sit here and pretend it doesn't. And it's something that, I mastermind with other agents and managers. There are a group of us who like share intel and like go back and forth.
So you've heard about me. I'm on the text chain?
No, thankfully. But no, I'm just saying like, this comes up every single time we get together. Like we all, like it stinks. And this particular actor, before they dropped me, they dropped their manager, who's one of my best friends. And so I had to like, she's commiserating with me, and then I'm like help her get through the quote unquote breakup, and now it's my turn. And like I wish that I could say, hey, don't worry about it. We know it's just business, and we do, but it still hurts. It still stinks. Yeah. No one likes it. But I also really, really hate dropping people, but I do it monthly. I do it sometimes weekly. And so it is a business. I think we do all have to understand that.
Weekly and monthly. Wow.
Oh yeah, every single month. I mean, we have numbers we have to hit, and if we're not hitting them, then we have to find other ways. We have to shake up the lollipops on the rack. Like we have to figure out what set of who are we being successful with? Who are we not being successful?
You know what? That's very important, and we cannot. Like I've held you so long, but this is such a great topic. I was just thinking to myself, this automatically disproves the myth out there that actors have that the agents aren't working for them. Because if you have to hit numbers, why would I keep anybody on my
correct?
Why would I keep you on my roster?
It's completely counterintuitive.
It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And if you've stayed there with your reps long enough, that's a good thing. Either they see, even if you haven't booked in a bit, they see potential in you. They're like, I don't want to let this one go because it might hit. You know what I mean, or something.
I mean, I've got actors. I've got one actor in particular. He's not mine anymore. He's at WME now, but. I had him for 2 years. He was non-union. He never booked anything. 3 years. 3 years he never booked anything, but he had activity, right? Mm-hmm. He'd get called into the same offices. There were wins along the way. We could see, like, even though he was still non-union, he never booked anything. And then he booked a huge series regular on HBO one day.
Yeah.
And it's because for 3 years, I could see the wins and I believed in the product. But a lot of agents wouldn't have lasted that long. And at that time, so the first 2 years were actually when I was an assistant, and then I started the division at DDO in 2013. And so that third year was just me, and like, it was great because I didn't have it. They didn't know about theatrical at that point. So there was no one to be like, listen, this guy's not making any money, or that you have to meet these margins or whatever. But there's at certain agencies, even certain times of my agency career where I'm at now, it would have been like, we wouldn't have been able to hold on to someone for that long who wasn't making money. So there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Do you hold on
longer now? I mean, because of the pandemic, or like?
Oh, yeah, we definitely don't count 20 or 21. Even 22 is a little, but yeah, and it's not. By the way, it's not pure like how much money did you bring in. There's definitely other considerations to it. But the more sort of people there are looking at the data, looking at the numbers, the more voices there are, and you kind of have to keep everyone happy. Like, I'm a partner at DDO, but I'm not the only partner at DDO, and the rest of the partners aren't involved in the division, so they really are just looking at numbers. And so for me to sit in those meetings when someone's contract is coming up or whatever, and to answer questions and say like, no, we got to sit on this guy. Trust me, he's doing really well, or his tapes are really good, even if he's not booking or whatever. Like, I have to put myself out a little bit for that. So and I have to keep my team happy. Like, every agent has like their people, and so there's some politics involved for sure. And that's what I mean to say. Like, on that end, like, you just can't take it personally, because like like you said, the fact that you stay on, like that's sometimes the personal part. Like the fact that like someone is like extending themselves for you, like putting their neck
what
out.
I also heard is, that narrative that like when we're getting back into these rooms with casting, right? We're getting over and over getting pinned and stuff like that, but we're not booking, and actors are like, oh, why am I not booking? Your team is also seeing that.
Yep.
And that's also a win for them. Like, it's like, great. He was on hold for this. He got a pin for that. That's activity that's happening that is, I don't want to say keeping you on that roster, but it's keeping you on that roster too. If you're
Sometimes,
not, because you can't eat my pins.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
Like, I'm just going, you can't eat that.
Totally.
So, with everybody, this is so great. And you should be doing more talks like this, because I think it kind of like breaks up this narrative that we've created. And I actually think I'm pretty actualized in a lot of this stuff, but I'm over here mind blown by a lot of the stuff you're saying.
I mean, I try to demystify, but I'm busy. I got
stuff to do.
I got 3 jobs.
Dad jokes
but I'm running the LA division. I oversee our New York legit division, our theatrical division in New York. I'm a partner. Like that's why I do look for opportunities to, like, when you reached out, I mean, I was like, yeah, let's do it. I mean, it helped that I listened, and I'm like, oh, this guy's not, like, he knows what he's doing.
And I kept saying, I am not looking for representation.
You really were so, like, over the top about it. Like, I promise, I'm so sorry I'm DMing you. It's like, man, it's fine, bro. Like,
but I imagine you must get a lot of people in your DMs or in emails or something like that saying, hey, seeking representation and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's even on my Twitter bio, don't DM for representation. It's just
right. I did. Maybe that's where I saw it.
Yeah, I think it is.
But I also believe that a lot of agents know each other, and I didn't want to slide in your DMs.
And I do know your agent.
And can you imagine if I slid in your DM and then it's like, so I wanted to make sure I was very clear up front about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But like I said earlier, like a lot of us talk, we know each other. Yeah. We share intel, we share info. So yeah, it does come up. I mean, it's not like we're trying to like sell people out, but sometimes, if it does seem like someone is, I'll give someone a heads up if it's a good friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. As you should, by the way.
Yeah.
If this person was a holy terror on your thing,
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, don't want to put that off in there. Anthony, thank you so much for coming. I think, I had a second question where I was just going to make sure there wasn't anything that I missed that I should be asking you. That's such an interesting question to ask. But I have, like, sometimes when we're driving here, we're like, on my heart, I want to say this last thing to the actor community or the actor tribe out there. And so I wanted to just, put that out there to you. Like, is there anything else that I should have asked maybe for?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think the big thing for me is just, like I said, really empowering actors to understand that, like, this, even though it does feel very personal at times, it is a business, and treating your team like you're their boss, if you will, even if you don't want to approach it as like they're working for you, but we're working together, like just understanding that, like, you are the leader of that team. Yeah. And you're the only one who really can be the leader of that team. And I just want to give actors as much space as possible to really own that, because I think a lot of people don't preach that or don't really see that, and it's fundamental to the way I approach the business. So yeah, that's really the big thing, and we kind of got that out.
I would say space and grace.
There you go.
Space and grace is what you sound like you're doing too.
Yeah.
We thank you. I thank you. And thank you for coming in.
I appreciate you. I'm gonna bump.
How we're gonna
bump
we're
it.
just
I
gonna,
don't know.
We're just gonna. How do we end this thing? How do we we just say? Thanks, bud.
Absolutely. Have a good one.
Didn't I tell you? Didn't I tell you? I told you Anthony was going to break it down, like all the way down. If you just listened, I want you to take some time to, like I said, check it out on YouTube and go watch it for a second time, see everything that was going there. It's a beautiful shot. It's just wonderful. But I have to say this one really hit home for me. And I want to be clear, Anthony, if you listen to it, Anthony knows my old agent. Great guy. This isn't about that person. He is super fantastic. I still love him. There's no love lost there at all. When I recorded this episode, as you know, I had an agent and now I don't, but here's the thing. The mind wants to tell you that crap. Remember in the opening, I said, crap, we are back here again. Damn. Again. Pull up a chair. Here's what I want to tell you. That's a lie. Just because this road looks familiar doesn't mean it's the same. Doesn't mean it has to come with the same feelings. Doesn't mean it has to turn out the same. This is a new moment. Don't let your mind trick you into that corner that this is the same. I work with a lot of actors. When this happens to them, getting dropped or separating from their team, I hear them say, I feel like I'm starting all over again. That right there is the lie. And listen, I hear you. I do. You have worked so hard to get where you are. And the thought of doing it again is exhausting. That part can be true. But you know what also is true? It could be freaking exciting. You could get with the next team you get with that is really, really, really going to catapult your career. Bless the person that was there for your career that did such great things up until this point. You know you have a dream. You know what you want. You know your vision. Here's the honest truth. Your first couple of times might have been hard on the rep search, but do not bring that energy to every single search, or it will be hard. True, I've been down this road before. True, I would have loved to stay right where I was because I liked my agency. I liked the agent I was working with. I think I worked hard in my career and finally got there. One of the top agencies in the town. But what I have learned and know for sure is that this is a business. Number one, this is a business. This isn't personal. If you can take the one thing away from this podcast, from this particular D12 shot, you will be leagues away above where I was 10 to 12 years ago, that this is a business. This isn't personal. That's number one. Number two, you are not starting from the beginning. No matter what your brain wants to tell you, you have learned so much, booked so much more, been on the freaking earth longer. You are not starting from scratch. Do not bring that energy into this present moment. Number three, make a freaking list of folks in the industry that you can reach out to for help, to share your absolute yes package with. If you don't know anyone, get on freaking IMDb Pro and start researching agents you might want to work with. Make a list of them. No more than 10 at a time. Start going through them. You are not in the same place. Do not let that energy come in here. We talk about this all the time in my membership community, but I want to make sure I say it to you right now. You still got that chair pulled up? Let's do a little bit more real talk. I know we aren't taught business skills, I should say. And it's a little hard to believe it's not personal when the product is you. I bet you're like, Dajuan, it feels mighty freaking personal when it's me. But I think this is one of the big lessons I had to learn. 100 IMDb credits later, this is a business. It's time for us to start treating it like that too. And go back and really listen to the episode with Anthony because he dropped some mad freaking nuggets that I wish I had known. So I just want to say one more time, this is a business. Don't quit. Don't get out of line. Borrow my faith in you. Take some of these lessons. Put them to work. I'm rooting for you so big, so big, so big. That's it for me on this episode of the Think Bigger Actors podcast. If you haven't enjoyed this episode and the D12 shot, I hope you'll consider following me on Instagram and the TikToks at Think Bigger Coaching. That's where we are on both of those social medias. And if you want to work with the Think Bigger team, check us out. Check us out. All the links are below this episode, and you can find us at thinkbiggercoaching.com. Join my membership where you can get direct coaching from me or the team. And remember, like I said, there is a questions sheet that you want to download that has all the questions I came up with. Up with after listening to this podcast. You're going to want it. 15 questions. You need them. They're below it. Share this with a friend. Can you believe that people listen to this podcast and don't share it with a friend? Don't let that be you. I'll see you for the next episode. So good. So good. Thank you.